Meeting to order. First order of business tonight will be our work session briefing session, and item number 1 is to discuss the agenda. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight on your agenda, on the consent agenda, item 4A are the minutes for the February 20th City Council meeting. Item 4B is a resolution authorizing a purchase of library materials from Broad Art Company. This is through a City of Dallas contract, and annually the library replaces books as part of their annual replacement, typically replacing between 6,000 and 7,000 items. And so Broad Art is one of the companies that we buy books from. We estimate expenditures of about $60,000 this year, and that is within the overall library materials replacement budget of $100,000. Those are all of the items on the consent agenda. On the regular agenda, we have a public hearing to amend ordinance number 2266, which was a special use permit for hotel and development. This is for the Hampton Inn and Suites. That SUP was previously approved by the council on February 16th of 2016. However, since then, Hampton Inn and Suites, the parent company, has come out with some new facade elevations, and so the Hampton Inn here is going to implement those, wants to implement those elevation changes, and that has necessitated a revised SUP. That does make some small changes to the site plan. And then, of course, the elevations being part of that SUP required it to go back through the approval process. That has been through the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the P&Z approved that unanimously.
Are the site plan modifications, I understand they're real minor, but is that a result of the change in the facade? Or?
Yes, there's an offset on the facade that changes the site plan.
Okay.
Item 5B is a resolution approving the terms and conditions of the Second Amendment to the project-specific agreement for Wintergreen Road project. You're familiar with the history of the Wintergreen Road project. So, as you know, the City Council approved an updated PSA, or approved a PSA in 2015 for Wintergreen Road. At that time, the city's share was going to be of the project was funded by Dallas County for a previous agreement by Commissioner Price. And then in May of 2017, the council approved a First Amendment. That was in February of 2016. The council approved a First Amendment to the PSA, and that was to deal with the right-of-way acquisition. We did not want to let the county do the acquisition. The city was wanting to handle that process. So that first PSA provided for the city to acquire that, and the county was going to split the cost of land acquisition with the city up to $110,000. So their share was $55,000, and then that was our estimated cost for the project. Since then, as you know, in May of last year, the city did approve a contract for the purchase of that right-of-way from Dr. Dotson and his wife for the Wintergreen Road project. During this time, the county and the participating cities have been involved in the project coordination and planning. The project was expected to be over budget. There's been a number of things that were done to look at reducing costs on the project, but ultimately the project is underfunded. And so the county is coming back to the participating cities to increase the share of participation in this project. Dallas County has increased their participation as well. The COG is funding $550,000 towards the project, and they are asking each of the cities now to increase their commitment. What that does for the city of Duncanville is it puts our commitment at $310,666. However, the county is giving credit to the city of Duncanville for the land acquisition of $200,000 credit, and then also $50,000 credit towards the signal light The city is always, Duncanville has always planned on providing that, that signal light, and so that has been budgeted for already, $50,000. And then the county will also reimburse the city up to $5,000 for a driveway improvement that we are planning to make on the alley parallel to Main Street. We're going to make a driveway cut to that alley that will be in line with the median cut in the Costco driveway on Main Street, and that will facilitate ingress and egress from that, from the Dodson's property, as well as all of those properties that use that alley now. So what this ultimately means to the city of Duncanville, if this is approved, is that the city will not get the $55,000 for the land acquisition that the county was previously going to provide, and it will be an additional $60,000 plus a little bit over $60,000 to the city of Duncanville for this project. Dallas County has increased their participation significantly since this PSA was first, this project was first developed in 2013. They've gone from about 2.7 million to, I think it's over 3.8 million now on their participation. We did discuss with them approaching COG for additional funding. The reason that they don't want to approach the COG right now is that it would, because the COG would have to go through a process, approval process to transfer funds from other projects, that would further delay bidding out the project. And the concern is that any more delays in bidding this project out will lead to further cost increases, which is one of the reasons why the project is under budget now, is because of the time delay from when it was first developed. So what they want to do is get the commitment on the funding now, bid the project out, and then if the project is, the bids come in, they'll know better where they stand funding-wise. And if there's a funding shortfall at that time, then they will go to the COG and ask for additional funding. And the logic behind that is that then if the COG approves that funding, which they probably would, their process will not delay the bidding, because it will take probably a number of months for them to approve that funding, but the project can start and it would still be available then before the project was completed, that funding in the COG. So that's
Our
kind of in a
our
nutshell.
amount, the additional amount's gonna be about 60, a little over 60,000.
From what we have already spent, yes.
Yeah, because they're giving us credit for all that stuff that we've already done. What are the other cities' projects?
The other cities are about $350,000 is their commitment. And I think it's, I'll tell you the specifics.
Around like 380K.
That was our original amount. That amount that Commissioner Price had originally committed. Yes, so DeSoto is $358,667, Cedar Hill is $353,667, and Duncanville is $310,666. And the funding, I know some questions have been asked about the funding that was previously committed by Commissioner Price. That is still there. That is in the Dallas County funding, so their increase includes that amount that he previously committed.
I understood that the amount we were getting reimbursed from the Dotson property was $75,000.
Plus $55,000 is what was in that previous agreement, which is
Well, what he had said originally was 75, and we were going to match it with 75, and then our portion increased.
No, in the PSA that was previously approved by the City Council in February of 2016, and that is included in your packet, that amount was $55,000 for the City of Duncanville, and it was 1/2 of the estimated cost. That included the appraised value of the Duncanville homestead and the vendor fee to perform the appraisal services. So we were estimating at that time a total cost of $110,000 split between the county and Duncanville. So it's $55,000 was what they were committing to us.
And what else have we paid that we were told that we would be reimbursed?
Pardon me?
What other amounts have we paid that we were told we were being reimbursed?
Well, that was the only amount that they had committed other than the original 380,000 that was in the PSA that was approved in 2013 with the county at that time. Duncanville's commitment, Duncanville's share was 380,000, and that was committed to by the county to fund that amount.
Okay, so the county said that they would fund 380,000?
At that time, yes, and they still have, that commitment is still there. That is included in the Dallas County amount. So even in the PSA, I'm jumping around, but even in the PSA that was approved in 2016, the First Amendment, Dallas County's share at that time was 2.9 million, and now their share is 3.9. So that includes the 380,000 plus additional funding that the county has committed.
Right, but
And
what,
so-
you know, when you talk about this, what the city of Cedar Hill and what the city of DeSoto get out of it is different than what we get out of it. Basically, we were straightening a road.
We are aligning an intersection, and it is a dangerous intersection because of it being an offset intersection, and with the hill there, and I believe that there has been accidents there, and a fatality accident there before. So it does provide a safer intersection for everyone traveling those roads.
Okay, but to clarify that, the accident that happened there was a bad guy that was running away from the police and hit an innocent person. It wasn't because of the intersection, it's because he was running from the police. And so this is the one, too, that the citizens voted this project not to do it. And so, and Dallas County made all these promises up and down that they were going to pay, they were going to pay, they were going to pay. And so now they're coming back because they underestimated it, or?
Well, the project's been delayed for several years, and construction costs have increased over the years, and so I think that's probably the biggest reason why it's underfunded, why the project is over budget.
I still worked here when this project started.
I know. Are you
I've been
kidding?
retired 7 years.
Are you kidding? I remember this very well from a councilman who had Dr. Dotson kicked out of the park for getting petitions signed. I remember very well the whole thing. And then he got all his petitions signed, forced it, then the same councilman forced it to go before a court to have a judge say whether it was legal to have a petition. Judge said, a scathing letter, absolutely. They could have the petition. We voted for it, citizens turned it down, and the council came back and said, they didn't care, they're gonna do it. I know, very well. So now they're saying that they need $60,000 more, and they're not gonna reimburse us the 55.
Correct. So why are they not going to reimburse us the 55?
Well, they're including
Is
that,
that
in the,
included?
basically included in the credit.
So the
I mean, they
credit-
could get it, but then it would increase, we just brought them a check back.
Okay, so we are getting.
Yeah, we are getting
We are
credit.
getting-
It's
we're
in
getting
the
Keep in
credit.
mind, it's off your bill that they have handed you.
Or what?
They're minusing it off the bill they have handed you.
That's true, so we're getting. Because if they gave it to us, we'd pay another, instead of 60, it'd be 55 more.
And you feel better?
What?
You feel better?
No, I'm just saying it's the way it would be.
Okay.
I mean, I can give it to you, but then you got to give it back to me.
Oh, I get it.
And you won't know the final until you get the bid.
Oh, that's
You gotta
the
do
other
all of that.
thing. Yeah.
You've got to do all of that before you get the final. It may come in lower.
Because
Chances are it's going to come in higher, but it could come in lower.
I doubt that. So this also includes on here the verbiage that if this goes up, we're agreeing to it right now? Because I saw it written in there. It just wasn't
It does
clear.
include that
Is that
agreement.
what it's saying? So if it goes up more, this gives it carte blanche that we'll pay for it.
The 3 cities.
But as I said, what they have said, though, that they will go to the COG for that additional funding. They recognize, and we were pretty clear with them when we met with them, that we don't really want them coming back to us asking for more, and that this has been a controversial enough issue without having to revisit it. And they understand that, and that's why they said they would go to the COG for additional funds if they need it for contingency or for any other amounts over the, that the bid is over the budget.
I don't understand why they won't go now. I hear what you're saying, that they don't want to because it takes too much time to go through their process.
It would delay it about another year, is their estimate, if they go to COP.
So the citizens of Duncanville should just pay because they don't want to go to North Central Texas Council of Governments, for those of you who don't know what COG is.
Well.
I know,
Okay.
it wasn't
Cedar
wanted
Hill.
all along.
Cedar Hill has approved this PSA for their share, and DeSoto will be considering theirs at an upcoming city council meeting.
Could you or Greg explain in the memo, it talks about phase 1 and phase 2, and then there's like an A and a B to phase 1?
Yeah, yes, sir. So in general, the entire project has 2 phases. And the part that we were talking about is phase 1. Now, within the phase 1 of the Wintergreen Road project, they've divided that into 2 phases. So it's almost an A and a B.
Yeah, that's,
Which is the actual Wintergreen Road, east-west, but then there's some ancillary work north-south on Duncanville Road. They split them because of some challenges with rights-of-way acquisition further south. And so that's what we're talking about. I know it's confusing, but that's sort of how they wrote the PSA. So yeah, so within phase 1 of Wintergreen, it is broken into a, well, 1.1 and 1.2, I guess,
Yeah.
would be the best way to explain.
but they want to award phase 1 of Wintergreen, A and B, or
Correct.
at the same time, even though one may start after the other.
They're going to stagger them based on, like I said, they're tied to, 1.2
Yeah,
is tied to securing the final rights of way, but they didn't want to wait to have 1.1 waiting on that because, again, as we talked, that escalation of price.
Ideally, they would rather do both, but if they can get the right-of-way done, then they'll start it and they'll do both. But right now, they're trying to look at options within that just to get the project started as quickly as they can.
And then it will also be one construction project.
yeah, one contractor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm, yeah, one project.
Now, is there any discussion about the remaining phase 2 on Cockrell Hill, you know, between our project and Cockrell?
Actually, that portion of the project is on hold. You know, the cities have not allocated funding towards it. Dallas County currently has it programmed for like 2020. But, you know, there's been no funding commitment.
Yeah, and that is another logical county job because it involves 2 different cities.
Yes, that's true, and the county is actually allocated funds for that portion of the project.
Yeah, and the right-of-way is basically there. Yeah.
That's not our part though, are we involved in that phase 2?
Yes,
We are.
but it goes by the old school ag farm.
Oh, yeah,
In
okay.
other words, running it on.
Right, yeah.
Cockrell Hill.
Yeah, that's a whole different deal.
Yeah, but that's what is phase
It's
2.
planned, yeah,
of the
it's
Cockrell
planned,
Hill
planned
project.
in the overall.
And it shows up on some of the drawings in here.
Yeah, okay.
And I would point out, since I've been on council, I'm certainly not an engineer, but concrete has gone down before. And I don't know with what's happening on the current federal level, but
Yeah. It's-
it can go down.
Anytime big
So when they always go,
projects.
it might go up, it might go up. It also might go down.
It could. And that would be nice if it did.
But that's what we are told and what we hear, and it's not always accurate. Sometimes it goes down.
Well, I will say that what we have seen is there's a lot of construction projects going on in the North Texas area. There's also a lot of reconstruction going on the south coast around Houston area because of Hurricane Harvey. Some of the things that we have seen, even in the commercial development retail sector, is that the price per square foot of construction is going up, and it's because of labor costs and construction materials. So while it could go down, I think it's unlikely that it will anytime soon.
Well, it fluctuates is the whole thing. It goes up and down, so it would, who knows what will happen on that.
And another just kind of housekeeping question while we're on this. These pictures that we have in our background, particularly at the intersection, they're showing the old driveway alignment.
That's an old aerial. The new
Yeah.
aerial is in the agreement, and it'll be in our presentation, we'll show it. And I don't know why that's what they provide.
Yeah, well, that's what all the different scenarios are on. I was just curious why they're still using that old version of it. I guess that came from the county.
So voting for this means that you're giving them approval for any other overages.
Which all the other agreements said as
Potentially, yes.
well.
Just the facts.
Incidentally, I wanted to advise y'all, Dr. Dotson's not here tonight. His mother is critically ill. In fact, the family are meeting to determine whether to disconnect people. So let's keep it there.
Item 5C is a resolution amending Resolution 2018-019R for the appointment of members to the Citizen Bond Advisory Committee. Councilmember at Large LeBlanc has nominated Alex Wheeler to serve on the Citizen Bond Advisory Committee as his choice, and so this resolution is brought forward to make that appointment.
I have a question on that. I can't get my note. Oh, okay. You've got, in the background information, when you're talking about the committees, I don't have the wording in front of me, but it says, number one, to decide if we need a bond. And then when you look at the resolutions, they're saying that because the city council has decided we need a bond. So this is the confusion that I was talking to you before about how you go to committees and you leave one idea that this is what we want, now you decide how we're going to do it, versus do you want this? It says two different things.
The city council, I don't know where you're pointing out, but the city council has always said, to look at a bond election for November. Now, but, the committee, the council always has the ability to say, decide after the bond committee makes its recommendations if you want to or not do that.
It says right here in the background history, the committee's purpose will be to gather input from citizens, and I can't read the word right there, about the master plan recommendations and provide a prioritized list of potential capital projects for, can't read that, something, maintain or increase tax rate to support, council to consider in determining, 1, whether to seek a bond election, 2, whether to reduce, I'm sorry, I can't read the rest, but then when you get down to the resolution, it says, whereas the city of Duncanville desires to hold a bond election. It is misleading.
Well, now, I read that. Are you reading where it says, provide a prioritized list of potential capital projects for the city council to consider in determining whether to seek a bond election? I think it's saying this, for the city council to decide, if that's what you're reading.
No, it says the committee's purpose will be to gather input from citizens, staff, master plan recommendations, etc., and provide a prioritized list of potential capital projects for city council to consider in determining, 1, whether to seek a bond election. That's number 1, whether to seek one.
But that's for the city council to consider.
I understand, but when you go before the committee, then what are you going to say? You're going to say, is this there to help decide whether they want, that they want to determine whether we need a bond election? Or are you going to read them the resolution where it says the city of Duncanville desires to hold a bond election? Because I know in the person that I talked to, I read that to them, that you need to decide whether you want a bond election. If so, what projects do you want, and how do you want to fund it? With a tax increase or with a bond? And this acts like that we've already decided that we want a bond, and so it's confusing. What are you telling the committee?
The committee has gotten a copy of this, of both of these resolutions. I mean, it's not, we're not trying to steer them or steer the council. The council is the one that has the ultimate decision, and we've said that over and over again.
But I thought we were kind of all on the same page, that we were trying to decide if that's the direction we wanted to go, and that's what this committee was about, in deciding whether they wanted to.
The committee can always make the recommendation to say, no, they don't want to go, recommend to the council that they don't want to go forward with it.
Well, they need to see this then also, because the resolutions do not say that. They say that the city of Duncanville desires to hold a bond election, period, to fund various capital improvement projects within the city. This is what I've told you before on those committees. It's very confusing sometimes because it sounds like what they're being told is that that's what we want, now you figure out how to do it. And that's not what's I understood, and that's not what this is saying. It says, number one, do we want a bond election? Number one, whether to seek a bond election. So you don't have a problem with it? I don't know. What do you think?
Are you reading it like they're going to determine whether we, I'm reading it, they're
No,
going to
'cause
provide
they're not-
information to
right,
us,
right.
for us to,
We'll make the final call, I know.
okay,
But
okay.
if they're not given the option of saying, you know what, I don't want a bond election, I think we can reappropriate money.
They can make that recommendation, but I think the wording there in the paragraph was intended that that's for the city council to consider whether you want to call a bond election. Once you get the list, you may decide you don't want to. That's your call.
I understand
though.
that. I'm talking about the committee. Are you going to tell them that they have the option also to decide that they don't want a bond
Yes.
election?
Yeah. I mean, if that's what you want. I mean, I don't, I think it seems to me like we're just kind of splitting hairs here.
Well, the words are
We're
different.
not.
The words are different. I think that's what, and how I read it too. In the background information, it says, you know, do we want one? But if you go up to the resolution, scroll up a little bit. You go up to the resolution, it says that we desire to hold an election, like it's already been.
Done deal.
It's been determined. So I think, so we just need to have the words to be the same in the resolution as they are in the, yeah, I think that's
Yes,
the
that needs to
simple
be
thing.
changed.
That's fine.
Yeah,
That's
the
fine.
words
I mean,
be
I
the
don't-
same.
That was not, it was not an intentional misleading of anybody. So
Well,
I can tell
and
you,
I'm certainly not saying it's intentional. I'm saying that it's misleading. So
words can be changed.
they can.
Yeah, I think that's,
You can.
because I read it like that we just need to have the same.
And I understand that the council has the bottom line, but this is what I've said to you before. Committees get confused. I've had committee members say to me that the way it was presented and the way they understood it was, that's what we wanted. Now you figure out how to do it. And that's not what this was about. And that's certainly not the direction I gave the person I put on there. So you go in there and listen to everything and make your decision. Okay?
Okay. Okay. Clear as that.
Change. So he's going to change it, or we're going to bring it back, or how do we do it?
Bring it up in the room. I'll note the change, and we'll change it on the resolution. You have an option to change anything you want in the resolution.
The words in the resolution that says the city desires to hold.
I don't know, okay, what are you going to change it to?
to, in the background.
Consider. How
Yeah,
about
to
this?
consider,
To consider.
to consider.
Whether they want to have a bond election?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that's all of the agenda items. That's it. Okay, now, we can go back and, agenda items were first, item 2A is second, discuss and input regarding single-family rental registration.
Mayor and members of council, I'd like to present a high-level briefing on the drafting of the rental registration ordinance that staff is working on, and provide some key points that we're wanting to include, but also get some input from the policy direction, input from the council as well, as we move forward with the drafting of this ordinance. So the current situation, using numbers that were provided in the comprehensive plan, there are approximately 13,813 housing units, and as we break them down, 11,245 single family, 317 duplex, 315 townhomes, and 1,936 apartments. So of those, it is estimated that 65.8% of that 13,813 are owner occupied. So taking the difference, we boil that down to 4,724 units. And then we back out the 1936 for the apartments, leaves us with 2,788 rental units, excluding multifamily, and then including the duplex and townhome. So let me kind of talk. Yes, ma'am.
And why are we excluding those?
We're excluding the multifamily because we already have a multifamily rental register or multifamily program, inspection program.
For duplexes and townhomes?
They are not. And that's why, that's one of the policy questions we want to bring up to council, because if we do include townhomes and duplexes, that then will cover every rental registration or every, residential unit within some kind of form of inspection process. On these numbers, again, I do want to stress that we're making assumptions that when in the comp plan, for example, the 65.8, that they were not included, or that they were in that encompassing kind of looking at the numbers that was also included. So when we back it out, the 2,788 is an estimate. That's the best possible estimate that we can come up with to date on the number of rentals that we have out there that would be included as part of this ordinance. And so why we then include those is to cover the gap for all rental properties within Duncanville itself. Obviously, as we go forward, we'll get a better handle on the number of units that might be out there. We might be able to cross-reference DCAD records versus what we have signed up for utility billing and that kind of thing. Examples of property that would be covered: single-family homes, duplex properties, townhome properties would be encompassed into this ordinance. So what's the goal of the program? What we'd like to be able to do is identify the rental housing stock within the city, and especially focusing on those properties that are substandard deteriorating. Again, we'd like to ask council's guidance about including duplex and townhome rental properties into this ordinance. We also want to be able to obtain property and ownership information for code enforcement purposes. As you may recall, the vacant building ordinance, that was really a key important part of that ordinance, is to be able to get that information, contact information, so we have situations that arise, either through code enforcement or emergency situations with police and fire, we'll have the most current up-to-date contact information. And then part of this will be able to enhance partnerships and communication with property owners. And that, with that being said, is being able to target them specifically on better ways to maintain and take up and care for your properties. I might just add that we've also visited with City of Mesquite that actually introduced this rental registration ordinance for their city back in 2006. And so one of the things that they saw was, after enacting it, a lot of properties being brought into compliance, and a much better result when it came from that, especially because they were able to educate property owners on approval and go through the inspection process. And clearly on this, something like this would aid in the housing stock preservation, maintenance, and upgrade. So when we do the inspection and we find things that are not only in the exterior, but one of the key parts of this particular ordinance would be the allowance of us doing inside or interior inspections. So when you had when you have a turnover of a tenant, or when you get that initial registration, we would be able to go inside. You know, typically any kind of code enforcement case, if we had some kind of, we suspected that there was an issue inside, we'd have to have probable cause first, get a warrant to be able to do that. In this instance, if there's a change in a tenant and they're coming to apply for a rental certificate of occupation, we would then be able to go in there and do both interior and exterior inspection, which was really the key aspect of this ordinance proposal. Then, of course, part of that is with any kind of neighborhoods that we have, you're going to help facilitate neighborhood stabilization, foster clean and safe rental properties throughout the community. So, yes, ma'am.
I know that there's a home in my neighborhood. There's no one living in there right now, but in the past there has been someone living in that house, and they don't have sewer, because at some point someone dumped concrete down it, so it's without sewer. So rather than getting someone renting in and running it stuff outside in the yard, this would solve that problem. And you have people who rent it who get taken advantage of, and they're just, you know, they don't want to cause any problems. So this is for the person who is to protect also the renters. They have a nice, safe place.
Yes, ma'am. And you know, to that regard, we would, you know, so if a new tenant were to come in, or they were to apply in order to get a rental certificate of occupation, we would have to do that inspection first. So we'd go and inspect everything inside. Now I've got the list of items that we would be checking and looking for, to your point.
And how do you do, you look at who owns the property? Tracy.
Tracy.
If someone owns properties and they're renting them to relatives, so you're looking at who the owner is on the property, and so how do you determine that?
You know, right now, the way it's situated, I mean, we can get the guidance from the council if they want to exempt, you know, related families, but otherwise, the way it's, okay, so the way it's written now, that if it's not the family of the owner as defined in the ordinance, they would still have to register that property.
Okay.
Yeah, I
To
know
what
that-
degree?
Pardon?
If I want to lease it to my second cousin, is that family?
We'll do it
Well,
by immediate family.
Immediate family, or how we define it.
First degree.
Yeah, first degree, okay.
I know at Texas A&M they have it, in College Station.
Right.
They have it. And if it's and you have to register it. But people buy homes down there so that their kids can live down there. And they consider those a second home, as long as they don't rent out more rooms. They're considered a second home. So I can see where that's okay.
Yeah, I
But
think
once you bring in that third person, or that non-related person.
Non-related family
Yeah.
in there.
The other thing that we're trying to gap we have before is we have people in homes that can't make repairs because they're renters, and generally your lease agreement will not allow the tenant to make permanent improvements. We have housing that becomes dilapidated where the tenant is not obligated and the landlord's not fixing it, so we want to make sure we've got that added incentive for the owner to take care of the property, not only to protect the tenants, but to protect the rest of our citizens against properties coming in disrepair, and have some way of making the owners a little bit more responsible than they otherwise have been by registering the homes.
What recourse would you have? You could take away the occupancy certificate?
Yes, we would have a
Yeah.
permit and a registration. We don't end up with a residential shammy bill, if you will, to allow those people to be absentee owners and not take care of the properties.
The certificate would be the equivalent of a regular certificate of, you know.
It's like a
we have for
certificate of
commercial
occupancy
property.
we have for commercial property. Same concept.
Thank you.
for a commercial property. Because in essence, we're almost treating this as a commercial affair, if you will. So that's asking for them to provide, or for them to get that rental certificate of occupancy. So council, that would be something I would need to probably have input is, if you do want to exempt, family members or just leave it to immediate, we could obviously have that as part of the, definitions within the ordinance itself.
My thought is nothing beyond first degree, and why would you not want to have the other two?
Again, we want them to be able to, the idea is to get them to take care of the property and invest in the property, as Bob mentioned. That's
I think it should be across the board.
There have been cases that they're trust fund babies, and they put and I'm speaking from firsthand experience. They put the problem child in a home that's already paid off, and all they're doing is paying taxes, and then they just kind of abandon it, and then the house there's drug running through it. There's just all kinds of stuff going on in that house. But the family doesn't want to deal with it, so the neighborhood has to deal with it. And I don't, but they are in a home that is owned by their parents. So in those kind of situations, I'm just thinking about the neighbors having to deal with the situation. And it's sort of like going down to going away to college is different. And I don't know how to separate the two.
So that's why it needs to be just across the board.
I think so too.
Yeah, because I've had first experience.
Well, I don't know because it's being challenged, and I don't know as far as.
I think we ought to write the ordinance that makes it rental and define rental as anyone other than the owner residing in the home. And then that way, it's across the board, it's even handedly. When you start creating exceptions, it's when you run afoul of
But the owner would be part of the family nucleus that would have to be in the house or be considered owner.
Right. The person whose name is on the ownership has to be in the house.
Right, owner occupied.
Yep.
Well, I'm sorry, I just have a lot of experience with College Station because this is something that we do down there. But they have to have a registered local contact. Oh, you got that? And they have to be within 30 miles of that home.
We got that.
Great minds think alike. I think we've
Okay.
got, thank you. No, that's important because again, we included, as y'all may remember, that we included that in the vacant building as well, that they weren't living out of state or somewhere that we couldn't get a hold of.
Then we don't have a Shamleyville problem.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
We
Can't
would
find
include
the
those.
owner.
Those would be.
Yeah.
Well, those would be included within, just in the North Central Texas Council of Governments defined 16-county area. So they would have to be within that area if they were going to be an agent or property manager or something like that. So the ordinance, again, council, kind of, again, just some guidance, include duplexes and townhomes within this ordinance along with single family. So what we would require, we would want, first of all, they would need to register. So any rental property under any of these three, areas would have to register with the city, regardless of whether they're occupied or not. So they would have to register with us and be on the list of saying, we are a rental property within the city of Duncanville. Then, if they want to have it occupied or it is occupied, they would then also have to come and get rental certificate of occupancy. That's what would trigger the inspection process for the city. The ultimate goal would be obviously going through the initial inspections, but any time that occupant moves out, that we would, and they want to bring another occupant in, we would have to inspect before the occupancy or the occupant moves into the house. And that's going to be a key feature in the ordinance because it is a little bit harder to do a really clean and full inspection when you have an occupied home. And so they would not be allowed, or they would be subject to a fine if they were to occupy the structure before we had the opportunity to perform an inspection on the property itself. Obviously, as I mentioned before, they would be looking at interior and exterior inspections. Obviously, meeting the standards not only within this ordinance, so if we wanted to add new features to the ordinance, we could just amend ordinance. We're proposing 2340. Other communities that we've noticed have done a couple of things, either have a standalone, or what they've done is they go back and they amend their building codes. The problem for us is, kind of keeping up with that. Mesquite actually uses the building code and they go back in if they want to tighten it, they'll amend features of the building code. We would rather put them all in one encompassing ordinance. I think it'll be easier for us from a staff perspective. And then if we want to put any kind of other provisions in there, we could, restrictions, but we would still rely on the international property code. I apologize. We would still rely on the International Property Code, International Residential Code, and then any other applicable, state, local codes, ordinances that we have. So it's not just this, but anything within our, playbook of ordinances. So again, one of the other factors would be that no rental certificate of occupancy would be issued till all taxes, liens, or any other outstanding code issues have been satisfied. So that kind of goes back into upgrading and repairing. We go in there and they have a bad water heater or sanitary sewer issues or something to that effect, we would go in there and say those need to be corrected before you can allow an occupant to come in and you'd be an issue an RCO.
Would the code be the code when the house was built, or would it be today's code?
Current code, 2015.
So that could get very onerous.
Again, but we're looking at just kind of the maintenance issues, not, so.
Well, one of the things that this helps satisfy, if you
upgrade.
are going to rent homes out for money, then they ought to be upgraded.
Yes.
So
To meet our standard.
safety for the tenant as well as safety for the neighborhood, because when you start turning people, homes are built to be occupied by an owner, not as rental properties. And so the quality of the wiring and the appliances, those things need to be constantly upgraded because renters are hard on property. I have a rental home, so I'm aware of, even though they're very nice tenants, it's just constant coming.
You're treating it as a
Very nice
business.
tenants are some of the worst.
But let's just say a home was built back in the 70s, it has aluminum wiring in it, which is outlawed today. So you go in and you tell, oh, you gotta rewire this place.
I don't think that's what we're going to be doing. So it's maintained at the level of how the home was built, but there may be instances where they have to upgrade something. If you had started putting new light fixtures in, yeah, you're going to have to upgrade.
And if you go into a home and you see that there's spark marks.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. then
You're looking for
the-
signs.
So in our neighborhood, since I've lived there, we've had 4 fires. And that's, I don't know, growing up, we never saw a fire. But, that seemed like every other year, my neighborhood.
So how are you going to find out originally what are the rental homes?
Well, so one of the things I think we're going to probably, one idea is to go back and cross-match DCAT records with what we have, for example, utility sign-ups for meter, for water and sewer service, to see if names match. One of the things, for example, that, again, going back to Mesquite, that they ran into was that you could even have owners that would keep the utilities in their name, and then they would report new tenants. So what we'd have is we'd have a provision in the ordinance that would say, change of tenant and or every 3 years, you have to come back in there and verify. That we would verify with them
And if there's,
who was in it. But what we try to do is to go back to answer your question, Councilmember, we cross-reference DCAT with what we have in water utility. Can I say that it's going to be 100% effective in catching all of them? No.
Well, even the
It'll be almost-
DCAT records, because you've got the owner, and then you've got a mailing address.
Right.
And if the owner doesn't live at the house, then that's a sign too that it's a real problem.
and I know that College Station, they're not proactive. They do low-hanging fruit. They would admit it. But if there's a complaint, then they will stake out and they'll run the license plates of that home to see who's living
Do well
there.
with that.
And that's how they catch, who's living there. Are they registered, to be living there?
Sounds
You've
like,
had tenants that-
sounds like Austin and Denton, a true college town, have a real problem with this, and so
So what
some
do
of
you
it the
do
market
if they
takes
don't
care of.
report it?
Fortunately, we don't have a large college there where
What's the
it
penalty?
exacerbates the
There's a
problem.
penalty provision. There is a penalty provision. So if we find out and they've had renters in there, they can be fined.
What's the fine?
It'd be Class C, I think we said
Yeah,
5.
Class 2, depending on what it is, could be up to $2,000.
to 2,000.
Per incident.
Yeah.
Which is
Per
like
day.
per day.
Yeah, per day.
Yeah.
It
So
could get hefty.
It's 180.
So if it becomes, if it becomes effective and then we find out that they have.
It's a health, safety, and welfare
They
issue,
issue
so we
tickets.
can charge the increased $2,000 fee under state law for this kind of thing.
Which would need to be promulgated in our
It's a
information campaign. that we
building
go out to
code
everyone.
type issue,
Yes.
safety
if I-
issue for the community.
So if I've got renters in the house now, I don't have any rental property, but if somebody does,
We have to.
are we gonna get overwhelmed with the number of inspections we have to do all at once? And so am I gonna have a problem with having renters before you can get to my house and get it inspected, or?
So, again, visiting with Mesquite, when they initiated the program in 2006, they actually got off to a slow start. Then when they kept with the public information campaign, they began to start trickling in more and more, especially as they got more effective in their outreach. And so there is that possibility, though, council members, that, you know, we could get lucky and they could start really coming in, rolling in. And right now, you're looking for us, just at the number of units that we've identified, up to 11 inspections a day, assuming 50 a week, not 52. But the problem for us is, and I'll get to the staffing in a minute, because we are going to have to ask for staffing. This will have a budget impact. Where right now we'd be looking at having one additional building inspector and then one permit clerk to handle that influx. But what they told us originally, that they had a very much slower start, and then it picked up and really started gaining momentum. And then they were doing, I think, 50 to 20 inspections at the outset when they really were having a large.
Well, with the fees charged, will that help cover?
Yeah, no, yeah, we'll, assuming that we get them in there, but we would have to have upfront costs to have them on, you know, on board before
Yeah,
we can
rolling.
start.
Yeah.
We can start doing that. So what are we looking for? Again, with any applicable codes that we have, unsafe structure, sidewalks, driveways, again, these are, you know, meeting the codes, accessory structures, pools, hot tubs, infestation issues. If we go inside the house and find that they, you know, we find rat droppings or some other kind of infestation, you know, those are things that we would force repair or remediation on. Water, plumbing systems, sanitary systems, mechanical, electrical, fire hazards. You know, that would be the gamut of things that we would be looking for when we go in and do inspections for each of those properties. So we brought up staff. So there would be the staffing requirements. These are first-year costs. Basically $152,000. Equipment includes vehicle, computer, office setup, and then we would have one inspector. They would be a building inspector, licensed building inspector, and then one permit clerk to handle those permits. And again, we would be treating them like any other kind of certificate of occupancy. So, for example, if we use the number, the 2,788 units, so we could, with a $55 registration fee, that could raise the 153. Now, these are minimal staffing. I think I'd like to caution that if it does, Councilman Rutherford, you mentioned that if we get an influx or if we get more, that number that we're showing you here is actually low or overly conservative. If we get more, we would probably want to indicate and let council know that we're seeing a trend that we may have more rental units out there than we originally identified. But this was just for the registration. We'd also have to have a list of inspection fees. So if you know, they fail the first inspection, the cost of sending another inspector to go back out there to do another inspection, and then what that fee would be for us to do that and to manage that. Timeline. So wanted to brief you. Would like to be able to brief the Neighborhood Vitality Commission as well. They've been very interested in this particular topic and just get any, obviously, input from the council and input from the commission. Then we would want to have some stakeholder input and try to conduct that in the spring season. Then, obviously, because of the budget implications for initiating this program, bring, you know, kind of have a little bit more detailed numbers for you at your council budget workshop in June. Then we would adopt the, so if council's okay, we would be communicating the ordinance and any provisions, and so if council was okay with that, have that set up for September 2018 for adoption, and also coincide with the budget process. And then we'd have a public information campaign to let everybody know that they do need to register their property, and then begin enforcement January 2019.
I think this should be faster than that. We've been telling you for a year or two. We got to figure out a way to go faster than that, and if we can find $60,000 for a road.
I think we.
What is that, 2 employees or 1?
Just 2.
2. I mean, this is something.
Clerk and an inspector.
Can I ask a question too? Does that include grandmother flats? You know, you have a little home on the same property?
Probably not paying rent.
Yeah, we would, not if there's the owner, it'd be the main structure. We're concentrating on the main structure itself.
Initially, if I had my mom in the house or
The
grandma
mom
in the
doesn't
house.
necessarily have to
it's-
be there, it's somebody else.
I understand,
Yeah.
but then, since I've done Spokane University Park, they have guest quarters.
Yeah.
And when, or they're maid quarters, and when the maid doesn't come back, they run them out to college students at SMU, and virtually cannot catch them.
Okay.
Is the timeline based
But
on,
they're staying in the house and they're maintained, and so it's not really big.
are you basing the timeline on the budget?
Yep, as a budget issue. Can we speed up the adoption of the ordinance itself? Yes, but it's going to be, again, the budget issue of having that money, fronting that money, equipment and staff, and then being ready. And I really do think I don't think we want to discount the stakeholder input and also the public information campaign. I think those are 2 key and vital points of saying, look, because the stakeholder is going to be putting everybody on notice. We are moving forward with this. We want to get your information and your ideas as we do that, because I think that will be helpful, but that's also part of that public information campaign. Can we tighten some of these? Perhaps so, but the reason I have that, to answer your question, is it is budget. It is a major budget impact. And, you know, the hiring process for, you know, building officials, inspectors, they're not easy to come by. I mean, I'm not saying that we can't find them, but.
We ought to start now. Because the other part of this too, that we're not talking about, is that we do not want to become a city of rental houses. And that is the direction we are going.
Yeah, we need to stop it.
We need to stop it.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing the council, but this is, will this stop rental properties from being used?
Well,
Perhaps it
I
may
don't
not.
think it will stop it, but it will help regulate it.
That's
Because,
the-
yeah, that's,
Yeah.
I think, because I just know even, you know, and I live in District 1, and there have been several deaths of older residents in my neighborhood, where on my street, and those homes they're now rentals. I mean, and so it's happening.
And that's the one big issue.
It is happening.
One big issue in District 3, that when I walk, this is an issue for them.
It's a big issue in District 5. It's citywide. How many houses do we have total?
So we're estimating about 2,788 units, but that's including single family, detached, again, duplex and townhome in that equation. It could be more. This I think is conservative.
You know, what we can do is we can go ahead and give the go-ahead of whatever we want tonight. It has, if you can bring back an expedited schedule or something.
Council's okay about the duplex and townhome?
Yes.
Including that, because originally I think this was a single family rental.
Yes, they need to be in there.
We're asking your guys to expand it.
Yes.
Make sure I've got all the answers. Okay. We will work on that.
We'll bring that back. Paul and Bob have been working on it, working's already, so we can bring back. But as Paul said, I think it is very important that we get stakeholder input. We need to talk to property managers and other people and get input so that we know if there's any pitfalls out there ahead of time. And in reality, it will take a while to ramp this program up. I mean, even if the council approves the budget and authorizes the new positions, it will take a while to ramp up, to get people hired and get a program in place. And it will be a while after that before revenue starts coming in. So we have to have funding up front to do all of these things and put it in place.
But we can find 60,000 for a road.
We can find the funds, it's just as part of the, we looked at it as part of the budget process, but if you want to move it up, we can do that. But I'm just saying, I don't know how much more it's going to move it up.
I think Paul and I are pretty much okay with the ordinance that we've got now. We made some tweaks on it as late as yesterday. We can make the effective date July 1, and if you wanted to go ahead and adopt it, then that way we could start the campaign and allow staff to get time to ramp up. And if you can't make that deadline because you can't find an inspector, you could always push the effective date of the ordinance. But you'll have sent the message that it's coming and we've done this, and it's just a matter of this month or next month. So we could do that in the ordinance too. So it would help with the education process, kind of run, instead of waiting at the end to make it effective, just go ahead and get a date out there and say, September 1, get ready, owners.
I like that.
that are in.
Oh,
We don't like to use the word consultant, but there are consultants that do this kind of work.
Right, and we come out
we
like
can
Bureau
start real
Veritas.
quick.
Bureau Veritas.
Yeah, and we've talked about that, hiring Bureau Veritas is an inspection company, but you pay more for that. But if we want to implement it sooner, we can do that and just recognize that there will be additional cost. But we can
Sure,
hire-
we could justify the fee if we're having to pay for that, so we could charge, make the regulated industry pay for the cost of compliance.
Do you know what that costs?
It's-
I know for inspection services, they base it on the value and.
It's about
just
200 bucks.
percentage
Value of the
of
home.
value, yeah, value of the home, so they make.
It's probably about 200 bucks an inspection.
I wouldn't, or if not
Maybe
more,
higher.
if not more.
They're
I know
pretty
we
high.
use-
They're pretty pricey.
And so if you did that, that would certainly discourage someone from having a rental property if they had 10 and $200 a pop.
We'll invest, yeah, we'll, yes ma'am, we'll look into what that would cost.
I don't know that that's the way to go, but.
Well, you can set the
As a
fee
stopgap
based on the
measure.
cost of compliance. It's just for staff that have to put those costs together for you, and you, the council, would have to set that fee. One of the things that I've seen other communities do is set the fee in anticipation of all the costs that may be on the high side, and then discount it if you register now. Give them an incentive to get to you and
Oh,
avoid
there
the
you go.
higher fee. and
Start getting
just like
creative.
any, yeah, Paul's been great about this and working on his creative solutions, so we'll bring you some creative alternatives.
Yeah, because when you talk to property managers, we can tell you right now that they're going to say they don't like it.
Oh, we had a lot, we tried
We
this
know
20
that.
years ago, we had a lot of pushback.
Yeah, but I go back to what
A lot of
Mr.
pushback.
Hager said. The houses were not built. You want to tell us again what you said?
Yeah, their houses, single-family homes are not built as rental units, and so they're not built with the same quality or the same kind of wiring and electrical. and-
It's a business.
And more
It
communities
is
have
a business.
adopted
Yeah.
these types of orders, so I think it is becoming common practice. So if you are in the rental business, this would not probably be as much of a shock as it was when this was
Yeah,
probably.
this is the trend. is to
And
go
it is a
to
cost of doing business.
Yeah,
And
just
it's,
raise the rent.
yeah, no, this will affect me, but I'm willing to do it for my community. I think it's important.
It's gonna be.
Okay, folks, that was the last agenda item.
Mayor, I do have the language. If someone would make the motion with Mr. Wheeler's appointment, I think it's Mr. Wheeler, and the language would be to change, the city of Duncanville may consider whether or not to hold a bond election to fund various capital improvement projects. And the first whereas, and the second whereas I've changed, or the third whereas, the city council has previously enacted a resolution establishing the ad hoc committee to provide input and to assist in determining the funding alternatives, including bond indebtedness, general funds, or other appropriate members as part of its charge. And if you'll make the motion as amended in work session, I'll give the language to the interim city secretary.
Okay, does anybody want to volunteer to do that?
I'll do it, or you want to do it? I don't care. And I want to ask too about the item about the hotel. It looked like the back of the hotel is facing north toward the freeway, I-20. And my understanding was that we were trying to turn things around to face. I-20.
No, it's not the back of the hotel, it's facing one.
Looked like two garage doors. Is it?
They have a new
It's
design.
inside, they actually, they share the drive with the Hilton Garden Inn, and so the front is actually at the corner, so it's kind of at an angle, and the side elevation is facing I-20 in the front as well. So in the presentation, I have some renderings that will help.
Okay. All right.
Okay, it's now 7:06. This meeting is adjourned, and please.
I said 7:30.
Call the council meeting to order. Our first order of business tonight will be our invocation, and tonight it's led by the Reverend Debbie Rigsby from the Trinity United Methodist Church. And following our invocation, we'll have pledge of allegiance to the flag. So at this time, will you please stand?
Let us pray. O gracious God, we pause tonight to open our hearts and our lives to you. On this election night, we give you thanks for our Duncanville City Council. We are grateful for their care of people, their dreams for the city, their leadership, and their efforts on our behalf. In the midst of diverse cares and diversity of people, guide each and every leader here and in our city government, as well as all the leaders in our schools, our businesses, and our churches. Help us to listen to each and every person and to hear their concerns as if their concerns are our own. Instill in us a willingness to learn and to grow. Move us to partner with people to work together for the well-being of all. Give us courage to try new things, to bring people together, and to build community. Open the doors for peace and justice to flow in our city. May we be filled with your love in all that we do and say. In Christ we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. My mayor's report tonight is that this is a lighter agenda tonight, so I really don't have a mayor's report. We're going to try to get out of here. We're all kind of speculating on what time the meeting will end, so we'll see. Council member reports? I don't see any. This is going very smooth. We have two proclamations tonight. First is recognition of Keep Duncanville Beautiful Spring 2018 Curb Appeal residential properties.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure this evening to recognize the efforts of our Keep Duncanville Beautiful Board, which we do have a couple of members here in the audience too that I'll call down if we'd like to recognize the following properties for their improvements and their overall appeal and what they have done in their neighborhoods. So starting in District 1, we have Albert and Wanda Landers at 946 Fairlawn Drive. And I'd ask if you are here tonight, if you would come down at the end of this. We'd like to get a group photo of everyone. District 2, Gregorio and Kelly Guerrero at 202 Tanglewood Drive. District 3, we have Juan and Martha Martinez from 527 Falling Leaves Drive. District 4 is represented by George Lopez, 207 Meadow Creek Drive. And District 5, we have Barry Collinsworth at 610 Wren Avenue. So if, do we have any of the winners here tonight present? No, okay, but I'd still like to recognize in the back, I have Bobby Cutler Hill, who's our chair for Keep Duncanville Beautiful, and Barbara McComb as well as a board member, and they are also members that go and select these properties. So we want to recognize all of these wonderful properties in Duncanville. Thank you all.
The second item under item number 2 is item B, and it's a proclamation recognizing Severe Weather Awareness Week, March 4th through 10, 2018. And I'm going to invite the fire chief and the assistant fire chief to come down and receive this. Well, we have a fire chief. The proclamation reads, whereas each year brings the potential for violent weather to Texas, including the city of Duncanville, which could be devastated by flooding, tornadoes, hail, windstorms, wildfires, and other emergencies, and whereas the Texas Division of Emergency Management and the National Weather Service has joined together to urge all citizens to prepare for severe weather events and to educate themselves on safety strategies. And whereas Governor Greg Abbott has declared March 4 through 10, 2018 as Severe Weather Awareness Week in Texas. During Severe Weather Awareness Week, Texans are advised to assemble an emergency preparedness kit of important emergency supplies, including a first aid kit, a NOAA weather radio or battery-powered radio, flashlight, medication, non-perishable food items, and bottled water. Be aware of your nearest storm shelter locations. Know where family will go if an evacuation is necessary, and develop an emergency plan for communicating with family and friends. Therefore, be it resolved that I, David L. Green, Mayor of the City of Duncanville, and on behalf of the City Council of Duncanville, do hereby proclaim March 4 through 10, 2018 as Severe Weather Awareness Week in Duncanville. And further we urge everyone in our community to learn more about and to participate in severe weather preparedness activities available in Duncanville, and wish the regional Know What to Do emergency preparedness website, that's www.knowwhattodo.com. Be informed, be prepared, and be involved.
Thank you, Mayor. We appreciate that confirmation.
Chief said he was going to be brief. Item number 3 is our citizens' input, and I have 3 cards tonight. I would ask as you come down, please give your name, address for the city secretary, and you have 2 minutes in which to speak. First card is Grady Smithy, Jr. Item number B, I'll ask the city secretary if she will read the captions on those at this time.
Item A, consider the minutes for the February 20th, 2018 City Council regular meeting. Item 4B, consider a resolution authorizing purchase number 1640 library material books from Brodart Company through the City of Dallas, contract number BT1402 with an estimated expenditure amount of $60,000.
Council, you've heard the captions read, so at this time, the chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Will you please vote? Okay, thank you very much. Item number 5 consists of items A through C. So item number A is to conduct a public hearing and consider amending ordinance number 2266, which established a special use permit for hotel and development regulations, and amending the site plan and elevation plan attached as an exhibit, Exhibit B, and replaced with a new site plan and elevation plan on Lot 2R, Block 1, Hilton Garden Inn, Duncanville, replat, more commonly known as 202 East Interstate Highway 20.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chastity Allen Benson, City Planner. The request before you tonight is to amend the existing specific use permit that was granted back in February of 2016 by the City Council to modify the exhibit for the site plan and the elevation. The owner is requesting the modification of the SUP to accommodate the newly released exterior elevations by Hampton Inn. They have a new prototype, and so the applicant is wanting to modify the SUP to exchange the elevations for the new recently approved elevations by Hampton Inn and Suites. The proposed change will minimally affect the site plan. There is some articulation on the building that is represented on the site plan, and that has been changed as a result of the new elevations. Again, the purpose is purely to amend the SUP to change the exhibit for the site plan and the elevation. All of the other conditions, all of the other elements of the site plan are the same. The parking, the fire lanes, all of that is the same. It's just the articulation of the building which requires that modification. If you recall, this is the area of request. The site is adjacent to the Hilton Garden Inn property on I-20. Does back up to some existing retail to the south. The site plan, this is the proposed site plan. It's, again, identical to the previously approved with the exception of the building articulation offsets. The question was brought forward during the briefing session regarding to the orientation of the building. Don't know that there's a laser on this. On this, but if you can see the drive that's on the west side of the property that is from I-20 that is shared with the Hilton Garden Inn, and the front of the building is actually there where you see kind of that triangular piece that is the circular drive and the porte-cochere for the hotel. So the actual side, the front and side of the building are on I-20. The back is the eastern elevation, and then of course the other side elevation is to the south. That's facing the existing retail to the south. It's a little bit difficult to see. Again, the approved site plan is essentially identical to the proposed. I'll show you a rendering of the building. It's a little difficult to see on the black and white. These are the proposed elevations. The modification includes, it meets all of the masonry requirements as did the previous elevations. They are proposing to introduce a tile that has like a wood-like appearance, which and also a more modern elevation change from the previously approved. The hotel is end-loaded, so the porte-cochere is on the end of the building, not in the middle, like you typically see on some hotels. It is on the end, so the top elevation is the front and side elevations there. This is a rendering. Again, this is a prototype that shows a middle entry points. They did not have the rendering finalized for an end-loaded hotel, but this is just to provide an example of the color scheme of the new product type. That's just another rendering of the image in the evening. This just gives you a close-up of the tile portion that will be an element that is added. And if you recall, the previous elevations had a more monochromatic color scheme. That was the previous elevation that was approved. Again, met the masonry requirements at that time as well. Planning and Zoning Commission did unanimously recommend approval of the request pending the replacement of the site plan and the elevation as proposed. And I'm available for questions, and the property owner is present as well.
Thank you. This is a public hearing, so if there's anyone who would like to speak either for or against this change in the SUP plan, please come forward at this time and give your name and address. Either for or against. Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Will you please vote? Okay, thank you very much. Well, we've closed the public hearing. Now we'll go ahead with, the chair will entertain a motion regarding what the council's desire on this.
I would like to ask a question.
Okay, you can ask. I just thought we'd get it on the floor first, but go ahead and ask.
Just so I understand your drawings that you had up there, those right there, so this is not what the actual building's going to look like?
It will, with the exception that the porte-cochere is on the end cap. It's not in the middle. It's on the end of this particular rendering.
So it's facing west, the portico?
Porte-cochere, yes, it is.
It's facing west?
Yes, at the
Okay, so
entrance
what
drive.
is facing I-20?
The north elevation, which is, this elevation at the bottom is the western, or the north elevation, which is the side that faces I-20, as well as the top is that's the back, the eastern elevation. This one is the western, the top elevation is the western elevation where the porte-cochere, that's the entry.
This one is the west?
On the top,
At the top?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so at the bottom, what is that?
That is the south elevation, so that is facing
South?
the south.
Towards the city? Right.
North, this is the elevation facing I-20 on the bottom.
Okay, and so where is the front door? Is that,
It's on the top. Well, that's the east elevation. The front door is on the west. It's an end-loaded product, so the porte-cochere is on the end. On the smaller elevation is the entry point on the west elevation.
That's the common drive that's
Correct.
shared with the Hilton right there. It's on the corner.
Right.
Facing west.
right,
The
but we're not
common
going to
drive.
have, it's not going to look like the entryway to the hotel facing the freeway?
Right, it's actually kind of at an angle, if you can see where the triangular piece there,
Right.
the drive, that's the front of it.
Okay, so the entrance is at the eastern end?
Western.
Western end?
Mhm. I wish I had a pointer.
Yeah, I'm just
but
trying to
that-
figure out what, that's what I thought, but that's at the eastern end.
No, the western is where the
Facing
triangular.
Hilton.
It's split?
Facing the hill.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I got it, okay. Yeah, because my understanding was that we were going to start trying to make things look like they were, you could see them from I-20, so
Right,
that was my
right.
question.
Yeah, the depth of the lot allowed for this particular orientation so they can share the drive with the Hilton Garden Inn. And so that will be the primary entrance and then the side elevation as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure we weren't showing the
The
back
back of the
end
building.
to I-20.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
One motion, 3 seconds. Take your pick. Are there any further questions concerning this? Seeing none, will you please vote? Okay, thank you. Item number 5B is to consider a resolution approving the terms and conditions of a second amendment to the project-specific agreement with Dallas County for proposed improvements to Wintergreen Road, MCIP project number 47302.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, distinguished members of the Duncanville City Council. I'm Jacqueline Colton, the Assistant Director of Public Works, and I am here to address and discuss with you tonight the Wintergreen Road project. In particular, I'm requesting approval of the Second Amendment to the project-specific agreement with Dallas County for the project. It's for actually the proposed design and construction to remediate the offset intersection and make improvements to both Wintergreen Road and Duncanville Road. This request is consistent with the council's direction as stated in work plan item 2.57, which is the Wintergreen Road project. We were tasked with coordinating with Dallas Water Utilities and Dallas County on road construction. And then it's also consistent with the council capstones number 1 and 2, which relate to most engaged citizens in America and creating high-quality neighborhoods. We'll have a very short agenda. Basically, we'll go over the project scope. We'll discuss the PSA history, which, you know, from conversations, this project has a very long history. And then we'll talk about this proposed Second Amendment and what we're bringing to the table tonight. Before you is a graphic showing the Phase 1 of the project. What I would like to emphasize is this project is solely Phase 1. There is a Phase 1 and 2 listed on the graphic. However, it relates to the sequencing of the construction of Phase 1. As we can see, the first phase starts at the intersection of Wintergreen and Main and covers a period of 1,300 feet along Wintergreen, and then from that same intersection, it is to improve Duncanville Road. As a part of the project, there were a number of right-of-way acquisitions that had to take place, one of them being in Duncanville, which the council addressed last year. Okay, there is also a Phase 2 portion to the project. It's not a part of the current scope, but basically Phase 2 of the project will eventually improve Wintergreen Road from the terminus of Phase 1 up to Cockrell Hill, but it is scheduled for a future date. The scope of the project is simple. It's to address traffic safety concerns and also allow for water supply needs, because Dallas Water Utilities provides drinking water to the city of Duncanville. They are planning a 96-inch pipeline extension that will provide water to Southwest Dallas County. And then we're gonna see concrete lanes. There'll be a new traffic signal at Wintergreen Road and Main Street, sidewalks, trails, street lighting, and a bridge across 10 Mile Creek. This is a typical crossing of the roadway, the proposed roadway. And you see the sidewalks and 2 lanes in each direction with lane size ranging from 11 to 12 feet.
Can you tell me the width of the sidewalks? Are they just for walking, or are they for biking also?
I don't, ma'am, I don't recall the.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I do know that Cedar Hill, from the bridge on, they wanted wider lanes in there to accommodate the bikes that they wanted to put in.
Okay. I will get that information for you. I would like to emphasize that this is a cooperative and a regional project with Cedar Hill, Duncanville, DeSoto, Dallas Water Utilities, TxDOT, and NITCOG, and all working together diligently to deliver this project to improve this area. In the project history, we can see that the project started in 2005 with actually the city submitting for funding for the project. And the actual design commenced in September of 2009. Then there was the current PSA approved in April of 2015. We amended the PSA with the first amendment in November of 2015 so that the city could acquire the right-of-way within the city of Duncanville to minimize the impacts upon our citizens. And then it also provided for a partial reimbursement of those appraisal fees and right-of-way costs by Dallas County. And of course, last year, the city approved a settlement agreement contract for the purchase of the land within the city of Duncanville, which was the property, or is the property, of Dr. and Mrs. Ronald and Lori Dotson. And that land was about 0.18 acres of land. And we minimized the impact as much as possible. In the funding, you can see that between Dallas County and TxDOT, 86% of the funding for this project is coming from them, with approximately 4% to be provided by each of the cities of Duncanville, DeSoto, and Cedar Hill, with DW contributing 2%. Okay, the current PSA Second Amendment as proposed, as indicated, the city's portion is $310,666. However, the county is giving us a credit of $250,000, $200,000 of which is for right-of-way acquisition costs that we paid to acquire the right-of-way within Duncanville, and another $50,000 to cover traffic equipment that we purchased. And so the net difference is $60,666. In addition, the PSA Second Amendment calls for the city to construct a driveway on Main Street to replace the one impacted by the project, and the county will reimburse us up to $5,000 for that work. So far, all the entities have approved this Second Amendment, with the exception of DeSoto. They're slated to approve the amendment in this month sometime during their council meeting. And construction is slated to start in the fall of 2018 to the summer of 2019, depending upon right-of-way acquisition and permitting. And then it'll take about 18 to 24 months to complete. Staff's recommendation is for approval of the Second Amendment to the PSA agreement. I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have at this time.
Okay. Councilwoman Jamison.
You said that that water main was bringing water to Duncanville.
Yes, it's bringing water to Southwest Dallas County.
Not
yes,
to
ma'am.
Duncanville.
Oh, no, ma'am.
No. Well, I just wanted that clear to residents, because that's not true.
Well, yes, there will not be a direct connection to Duncanville, but the pipeline will provide water to the Southwest.
Right. All I'm talking about is when you look at the division of the money, what Duncanville gets out of it is straightening Wintergreen Road and the off-centered intersection.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't want it to sound like we're receiving some big thing, because we're not. I don't think that it should be divided equally three ways.
I think that the other cities do receive more from the project. And it needs to be pointed out, too, that voting for this project also says that the resolution says that we are giving carte blanche to any more overrides that Dallas County has. You don't even have to come back to us. Is that correct?
What it does, it'll have to come back to you to approve the funding for it, but it commits you to cost share in the event that COG does not fund the overruns.
So if COG does not fund it, COG is North Central Texas Council of Governments. If they don't fund this, then we'll pay for it. Our portion, 1/3.
Yes, ma'am, but the item will have to come back to the council because the agreement provides for us to pay no more than the $310,666. So if there was, a cost overrun, or if the project was more expensive to build than anticipated currently, then there would need to be a council item brought back to the council. So there wouldn't be any increases that were not brought before the council first for approval.
Well, then what exactly does that give us?
You're committing that you will assist in the funding of any cost overruns in the event that they're not funded from an alternative methodology, but it technically does have to come back before you to vote on it, because only you can appropriate the money.
I like that technically. So it technically comes back to us to vote on it, but if Council of Governments doesn't pay for it, then the citizens pay for it. The project that they, and I want to note too that you had on your screen that June 24th, 2013, the citizens of Duncanville voted against this project. April 2015, the city council voted to ignore them and to go ahead. That's all.
Yes, ma'am.
Further question? Yes, Councilman Sport.
I know today that Duncanville receives their water, the southern part and the western part of Duncanville receives their water via a pipeline under Daniel-Dale, which feeds that part of town. With this new pipeline that Dallas is running in, it goes to the Sourcey Road pump stations out there, which also feed the master. It feeds all the tanks that we have, including the possibility of feeding our tank. So I believe that when this pipeline is completed, they'll probably transfer some of the load off of the Daniel-Dale pipeline and start feeding us from the big pipeline. So I believe, while today it's right, that line would not feed Duncanville. I believe in the future it will. And that's the reason they're running it out here, because we've got a much smaller line under Daniel-Dale.
Who are they feeding right now with that pipe?
Well, it's not complete yet.
But who will be the recipient?
As it comes across each of the cities.
It's going to City Hall, DeSoto.
No.
No, Lancaster, Cedar Hill, DeSoto, as it comes across from the East Dallas treatment plant, it's feeding each one of the cities coming across. And it's decreasing in size as it comes across too, and its terminus is the Sourcey Road tanks out there, which are just the other side of Clark Road and Daniel-Dale or Mountain Creek Parkway.
I guess I'm not understanding what you're saying because we were told it did not bring us water.
Today, it doesn't come to Duncanville today.
Right.
We've got a piece in beside Costco that we built when we widened Wintergreen.
Dennis, had,
I'm just saying in the future, it probably is going to feed Duncanville's water.
Dennis, that Daniel-Dale pipeline's a 48-inch pipeline, is it not?
That sounds about right. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think I saw it was 48. This is the 96. This is the same line that was put through Duncanville a few years back, before we repaved Wintergreen Road. It's a 96-inch line. You can drive a pickup truck through there, and it's dry laid from the west side of 67 all the way back up to the point at Main Street or Duncanville Road, all the way through the Costco property there. It's already put in. It will join on at that point.
And the other point I want to make is that any contract that Duncanville lets, any street construction project or any contract we let, if there's an overrun, we pay for it. In this contract I see is no different, except we're only paying roughly a third of any overrun on it.
Councilwoman Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor. When I ran for council this past time, I ran against the Wintergreen project. And my constituents of District 3 sent me, I believe many of them sent me here to oppose that, to uphold the vote that Councilmember Jamerson was referring to. And I did that back in May, I don't know, I guess it's back in the spring when we of last year, when we considered the issue of acquiring the right-of-way from the Dotson property. And I made my presentation, and the reason why I'm going through this is because I want to be on record. I made my presentation to the council. I made my presentation to the city. I wrote, at that time we still had a paper. I made my thoughts be known in the paper. And so I voted, I was the only council member that voted against that acquisition of the Dotson property. But since that time, I'm going to vote for this because we need to move on. And that's what you do. You make your best presentation. The opposing sides make their best presentations. You come out, you vote, and then you move on. So that is the reason why I'll be voting for this.
Councilwoman Jamerson.
What we voted for before was only the acquisition of Dr. Dotson's land, and it was the agreement to pay him the money. That's what we voted on. I voted for that. The reason why is because the council was going to go ahead and do this no matter what the citizens said. I thought that in eminent domaining his land, taking his land, that we needed to pay him. Now, what we were told at the time was that Dallas County was going to reimburse us part of that portion. Now we're being told that, oh, they're going to count that as part of the money we owe them. So they're not going to, it's minused off that full amount, but we're still paying it. And so I guess it's like first time shame on you, second time shame on me, believing Dallas County, because they had told us they were going to cover that and give it back. Now they're telling us we have a bigger bill and that'll be minused off, but we're not going to be reimbursed for Dr. Dotson's property. And so it's just $60,000 more right now, and that then, as we see, that if you go forward, and I hear what you're saying, that any overruns on any roads that we do, that we have to eat. But this wasn't a project that the people wanted to begin with, and now we're asking them to fund more of it than they originally were told, and giving them, letting the Dallas County know that whatever else they come up with, we'll agree again. If COG can't pay for it, that we will. So that's where I have a problem. I was elected to represent the taxpayer, the people that are in the city, and that's who I intend to represent. Not someone who thinks it's a great idea, or Dallas County, who could have put their pipe somewhere else. The citizens of Duncanville voted on June 24th, 2013, that they did not want this project. So, and what the vote was before, to clarify, was for Dr. Dotson's property. It was not for the project. It was, if they're going to go ahead, were we going to reimburse him for his property? If so, how much? And that's what it was about. And I did vote for that.
There's been some disagreement for a long time on the vote, that the petition was sent out, the vote was against the city going forward. But there's been a question all the way through, and I think this council is still divided somewhat on that, about the legality of the vote. And I'm going to ask the city attorney to kind of give us an interpretation on that.
Mayor and council, as it's been alluded to, when this project was originally passed by the city council in 2013, there was subsequent a referendum petition that was circulated and signed, and a referendum election was held whether or not this project and this PSA would be approved and this project would go forward. There was initially, I think, an attempt at some court proceeding with regard to the petition, and then subsequently an election was held when the court, as far as I could tell, had not actually formally made a ruling on the issue. There was a temporary ruling, but not a permanent ruling on the issue. An election was held in November of 2013 on the referendum of whether this project would go forward. As part of the PSA, there was money that was allocated to the city from the county through a, I believe it was a toll in the extension of what is we refer to as Highway 161. The city almost had $200,000 or so money allocated to it. I believe it was $189,000. And it was that allocation which was the council's decision to use that funds or use those funds and appropriated those funds towards this project through the county. And that's part of the money that the county used to lessen the cost to the citizens of Duncanville. The provisions in your home rule charter specifically say that the council may consider, or the citizens may consider, a referendum or initiative on a matter other than a matter of appropriations. Because the city appropriated funds in that resolution, that referendum is not binding on the city council to consider subsequently the referendum that was held. So if your home rule charter specifically says that an appropriation of funds cannot be, and here's the reason why. If, for example, you entered into a contract, and that contract you appropriated funds to pay for a construction contract, and you had a referendum, then the citizens would in fact take a vote that would cause you to be in conflict or to breach a contract of which you would have liability for. That contract with the PSA was approved by the council. The mayor did not sign the resolution, I believe, but that's a ministerial act. The council had approved it. You were actually in breach of the contract with the county over the PSA. So based on that, that referendum is not binding on the council to consider moving ahead with the project. And I understand that citizens may say, well, we voted not to have the project, but one, you were in breach of contract with the county, and two, the referendum was ineffectual based on your charter. So that was the opinion that I rendered to the council, and that's why you considered moving forward on this project and where we are today.
Okay. Ms. Jameson, we're going to wrap it up after this one.
Yes. This was a different council then? This is not the same mayor? I don't think anybody on the council right now was on the council then. And we had a different city attorney, and there was a council member who forced the city attorney to go to court to see if it was legal or not. They went to Judge Moyer. He wrote a scathing letter. And he said, absolutely, it's legal, and that citizens have the right to petition their government. And as far as a contract with Dallas County on money, I never heard anything about a contract. We didn't vote on a contract on money that we got from 161 is not even in Duncanville. So you're talking about that it was just money that was left over from the project?
No, if you look at the funding, the PSA is a contract. It's a PSA stands
Well,
for
I'd have to see
specific
it. I'd want to see it, because we've never seen the contract. We've
That's
never
what-
seen the contract.
You have a master agreement with the county to fund road improvements within Dallas County. A PSA is a specific amendment to that overall agreement to do that road. So the PSA is actually an addendum to a master agreement that you have with the county. In the PSA, there was a funding mechanism to spend money that was allocated to the city for the city to spend on a road project that was part of the city's funds that the county received on its behalf for the extension of 161. It's true 161 doesn't go through, but for whatever reason, you got an allocation of those funds. When you allocate funds, the textbook definition of an appropriation is the authorization to spend money that the city has custody or control over. So that when the council voted to approve the PSA, they made an appropriations. Our home rule charter specifically says that a referendum is ineffectual on an appropriation of
When did they vote for
municipal
the PSA?
funds. It was in 2013 when you approved the resolution.
No, wait a minute. We didn't approve the resolution in 2013.
You had a vote to approve the project, the initial PSA. That's what the petition was for, is to set aside that resolution approving that PSA.
There's something about this isn't right, because it didn't come before the council. The PSA did not come before the council. So you're saying that there was an agreement on the money that was over in the 161 project?
There was an initial PSA in 2013.
Where is it?
I don't know where it is right
And
now.
it said that all the money that was overage on 161, they're going to give to Duncanville.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay,
There was
well, I
an
wanna understand.
allocation of money that was attributable through the extension. They were toll.
I got it, but I want to know how that tied to Duncanville.
It was tied to Duncanville because they had to get all of the cities in the county to approve the extension of 161, because that money was taken from other projects.
Okay.
And so what they promised Duncanville is if you would support the 161, we would give you part of those toll proceeds to authorize future road projects. And it's that money that the county was holding for and on behalf of the city that was allocated towards this project. So,
But you're saying that they allocated the money for this specific project?
not for the Wintergreen project. When the city, now wait a minute, Ms. Jamison, when the city council approved this resolution, which is resolution 2013-062402, there's a PSA attached to it, and in that agreement, they agreed to use your toll funds as part of the cost for this portion of the Wintergreen Road project that you were approving in this PSA.
And it says on there Wintergreen project?
Yes.
Okay, and what's the date on it?
The resolution was passed on the 24th day of June 2013.
That's when it was going to a vote, and there were signatures all the way.
There was subsequently, there was a petition to overturn this that was passed
Okay.
after this was approved, and that was subsequently voted on in November of 2013, and that vote passed. But,
That vote passed to overturn that.
right, but it
And Judge
cannot-
Moyer said it was legal.
But
You're
it-
saying it's not.
I'm saying that the referendum was ineffectual to overturn this because this document appropriates funds, which our home rule charter says you cannot have a referendum to appropriate funds. And the reason is, if you appropriate funds and enter into an agreement, which you did, by the citizens canceling the agreement, you're now in breach.
Well, so in
You
a
still
breach,
owe
all
the
you would
money.
do is have to pay off Dallas County. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's one of the results of the breach.
Yeah.
Or they could sue you for specific performance, which requires you to perform under the agreement. That's why an appropriation cannot be overturned by a referendum. There would be no certainty in your budget process.
We don't have any certainty now. Dallas County's not paying what they said they would. Every time they have overruns, they come back to us.
If, for example, if you passed 6 appropriations tonight and bought police cars, handguns for a fire truck, and you could have a referendum on all those things, and you've already bought them by approving the contract, there would be no certainty for any vendor to ever deal with the city, because you'd be subject to a referendum to overturn everything that the council had done.
Well, I understand that, but if the contract was fulfilled, but this one was not, it was immediately. In fact, it was going on during that time that whatever you said was passed. All of this was going on. For those of you who remember or don't remember, this went over months, because the summer before, the same council person who did all this other stuff had the Dotsons kicked out of a park for getting a petition signed on 4th of July. And they had his mother kicked out of the Senior Citizen Center for getting signatures on a petition. She went and had lunch and got some of her friends there to sign it. So this sounds to me, because it was very, very divisive and very, citizens didn't want it. This sounds to me like that was something that was done, well, I know it was. It was done quickly. I was on the council. I don't remember that at all, but we certainly weren't told that if you vote for something like that, that would mean that you'd have to do that. Yeah, that's very misleading. That because this council now cannot tie the hands of future councils on some decision they make. Now, if it's a contract, then obviously you have to acknowledge a contract. But on funding, that says okay, well, I don't know. Citizens overturned it, and the judge said it was legal.
No, ma'am, the judge didn't say that. What the lawsuit was about is whether they had the right to pass the petition. What Judge Moyer said, they have the right to pass out the petition. He did not rule on what the effect of what the vote would have been on the referendum itself.
Right, but they had the right to do the petition. The petition was to force them to vote. They voted against the project.
Now, what was being litigated from in front of Judge Moyer is, did they have the right to pass the petition, not what the results of the petition were. He never ruled on that.
That's not what he was looking for. You can bring the letter up. They said that they didn't have the right to petition the city to bring it to a vote. And he said, yes, they did.
But he didn't rule on what the effect of the vote
Well, he
was.
said he did, but he said that they had the right to petition the city to force it to a vote. And they did. And we voted on it, and the citizens voted no.
Okay. City Manager, you had something to say, and then I'm going to call for a vote.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to point out one thing, since it was mentioned that the county was coming back to the cities for any cost overruns. It should be noted that the county has put in more than $1 million or increased their funding by more than $1 million from when this project was first scoped 10 years ago. Their increase, Dallas County is putting almost $3.9 million into this project. TxDOT is putting in a little over $3 million. And then the cities of DeSoto, Cedar Hill, and Duncanville are each around $350,000 for DeSoto and Cedar Hill, and Duncanville at $310,000. City of Dallas at $150,000. So Dallas County has significantly increased their cost in this project, their commitment in this project, and it does include the funding that Commissioner Price previously committed to the City of Duncanville in that amount. So I just wanted to point that out, that the other entities are also pitching in and increasing their funding significantly.
Okay, thank you. Chair will entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. We've had our discussion prior to the motion, so at this time I will ask you to please vote. Okay, thank you very much. That took a while, but I thought it was important that we get all of the facts out and that everybody had a kind of a more clear understanding of what the vote would be. Item number C is to consider a resolution amending resolution number 2018-019R to provide for the appointment of members to the City Citizens Bond Advisory Committee.
Mayor and Council, this resolution is to appoint an additional member to the Citizen Bond Advisory Committee. Councilmember at Large Patrick LeBlanc has nominated Alex Wheeler to serve on the committee, so this resolution will make that appointment. Also during the workshop, the council indicated a desire to change some of the wording in the first whereas, and I believe the city attorney has that wording.
Yes, Mayor and Council, the whereas would read now, whereas the City of Duncanville may consider whether or not to hold a bond election to fund various capital improvement projects with the city, and also the third whereas, which should now read that the City Council has previously enacted Resolution 2018-19 establishing an ad hoc Citizens Bond Advisory Committee to provide its input to the City Council to assist in determining a funding alternatives, including bond indebtedness, general fund, or other appropriate methods as part of its charge. To provide input to the City Council to assist the Council in determining funding alternatives, including bond indebtedness, general funds, or other appropriate methods.
Okay, and so in the first one, you had whether they want to move ahead with it.
Yes, the first whereas would be to consider whether or not to hold a bond election.
Okay, motion and a second. Will you please vote?
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I would also like to add to the motion, I believe it's in section 5, where it says the city council shall appoint a member of the city council to serve as chairperson to the bond advisory committee. I'd like to amend that to say that the bond advisory committee will appoint a chairman, and let's leave the city council out of it.
Okay.
You could propose that as a friendly amendment if the second and the movement would accept it.
I propose it as a friendly
Yeah, we
amendment.
also had the 2 additional seats. Are we going to take that out too? I think so.
You want to take them out, or?
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
All right.
Okay.
Take the 2 seats out and no councilman.
I've got those changes noted.
I accept the friendly amendment.
This is the second?
Second.
Okay, second accepts it too.
So you have an amended motion as read by me, the appointment of Mr. Wheeler for Mr. LeBlanc, and language to eliminate the council member and for the committee to have 2 less members and elect its own chairperson from the membership.
Correct. Everybody clear on that? Okay. Any further conversation? Seeing none, please vote. Okay, thank you very much. Before we go into our staff reports, I do want to announce that we've been in contact with Dr. Dotson. His mother is critically ill, and so the family's gathered at the hospital tonight. So just want to let everybody know that, and please include Dr. Dotson and his family in your prayers, if you will, please. Staff reports, item number 6. Item number A is to receive the Duncanville Community and Economic Development Corporation 2017 Annual Report and the 2017-18 Community Enhancement Program Update.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. Jessica James, Director of Economic Development. Every year we come, the DCEDC attends the council meeting and provides this update and report per our bylaws. And I would like to note this evening that the majority of the board is present. Just first of all, we always start with a recap of the dollar figures and investment back into the community. And you can see the community dollars invested as a result of DCEDC's participation comes to $11,418,967. These total dollars invested come from the businesses that the DCEDC has worked with. Everything from personal property for their business as well as purchasing property. These are new business as well as business expansions or also updates to their existing building and properties. The economic development project dollars account for $549,386. These are dollars that are paid out, economic development dollars that are paid out either through the design incentive grants that we provide or other incentives or grants that we provided. And we'll be going through these further in the presentation. The community development project dollars account for $1,130,342. This accounts for the debt payment that we do for the DCEDC covers for the field house, as well as the community park bonds that the EDC covers. It also includes the beautification efforts throughout the city, as well as the small portion allotted for Keep Duncanville Beautiful. Moving on, jobs created or retained by projects associated basically with the DCEDC participation. This accounts for 189 jobs. So these are jobs that have either been retained due to business expansion or created due to either as well as business expansion or new businesses into the community. Every year we provide a recap in terms of the library and the recreation center usage. As you all remember, that the proposition that created the Type B funds also provided the option for the city to use a portion of those funds to build the recreation and library center, the joint facility. And so this is just a recap in terms of the usage of those facilities. And then we always like to go over and the existing Type B projects, where they are, the status of them. So we'll just start with the field house. The DCEDC, as I told you earlier, continues to pay that debt service payment. That accounts for approximately $538,000, and that will expire in August of 2025. So we're getting closer. MD Multi-Services, LLC, otherwise known as Dallas Heart and Vascular. This incentive is complete. The incentive was provided by the board in 2013. It was for $57,000, and it was paid in 2 phases. The first phase was for the building that you see, well, they're both up now, but for the first building that the community saw for a number of years. And then the second building was just completed this year. So that's why this has been completed. It was for a fence to help the aesthetics and also improve that kind of separation between the neighborhood as well as the business. Moving on, W&B Service Company, the incentive actually expires this year. It was put into place in 2012. It was for 5 years and not to exceed $200,000. To date, in terms of 2017, the city has DCEDC has paid $172,330 plus change. And so basically, we have almost $28,000 left to pay on this incentive this year. And this is based on sales tax generation. Moving on, the Hampton Inn and Suites. Tonight, you all approved the new site elevation, which is exciting, and we're looking forward to it. Obviously, they've broken ground, so that's a great movement in the right direction. The incentive is still active. In fact, there were two incentives, if you remember right, and we're just referring to the DCEDC. That was $45,000. Now, the council did also approve one through HOT funds, but those figures are not included in our presentation tonight. The investment for that was approximately $8.9 million that they're investing into the community. And the rate of return, if you remember right, that's something that we put in place when I came on board, is to really be able to analyze each of those incentives and really look at our rate of return to make sure it was a good investment for the community and the DCEDC. The rate of return for this investment was 94%, so that's huge. If you get 10% in the economic development world for rate of return, you're doing great. So we got 94%. Basically, as a 1.1 year payback, and again, that is covering, though, that takes in consideration that rate of return and payback is for the entire $295,000, which accounts for the EDC portion as well as the HOT funds. Moving on, we always like to cover our highlights throughout the year, and again, this report covers the activities of the board. And so moving on, you can see in January 12th, the board approved a $1,000, $817.58 design incentive sign grant to Natasha Fain, owner of Salon 921. For her property, which is located at 739 West Wheatland Road. And if you all remember right, that's in the Tom Thumb Shopping Center. You can see down there that we took the picture when we presented her the check, and she was just so thankful and appreciative of that investment, because she is one of our small business owners that we really try to support in the community. Moving on, you can see on February 9th that the board approved a grant to GK Steel Fabrication, the amount of $76,083, and that was for the indoor sprinkler system. Again, looking at the rate of return, the annual rate of return for that was 173%. with an 8-month payback. So that was an excellent investment for the community. On April 13, you can see, again, like I just said, the presentation there of the board with the check symbolizing it. Moving on, additionally, on April 13th, the board approved a wall incentive grant to Ten Hagen in the amount of $48,000. The DCEDC board also approved a loan to the TIF number 1 in the amount of $150,000. And you can see down there on July 13th that the board presented that check to GK Steel. And again, their improvements to that area have just been amazing in terms of the paint and the updates to that building that was in disrepair for a number of uses. Moving on, September 14th, the board approved to extend the Hampton Inn and Suites agreement from 1 year to 18 months for the hotel commencement. And if you remember, the reason why that the board did that was because there were so many issues with utilities and trying to get those utilities worked out with the different companies. On October 12th, the board approved a paint grant to Leon Miller Commercial Properties for his building located at 550, and you can see down there on the December 14th that the board presented him that check. And if you drive by and look at the building, he went back with the same color, Ms. Jameson, that you had noted, but all of the damage on the building is fixed and it looks a lot better. Moving on, also on the 14th, you can see there were 2 other actions that were taken. The board elected Barry Gordon, president, and Steve Giles, vice president, and I will tell you that this is the second time that they've been elected for those roles. The board has a lot of faith in both of their leaderships. Moving on, the board also approved a resolution expressing support for regional rail and expansion of passenger rail service, basically south of into Duncanville. And you'll see as we go into the CEP, or the Community Enhancement Program, that is one of the goals of the board. They definitely support that venture as well as with the council. Moving on, you can see that.
Jessica?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you explain that last item? I mean, I know it, but I'd like the citizens to know it.
Yes, ma'am. And this is something that the council's been looking at for a number of years in terms of how to get service, rail service, whether that be light or commuter rail for basically residents to utilize, and the area as well, service to Duncanville. That also would connect Cedar Hill as well as Midlothian. And so what this resolution does is it supports that extension for that rail into the Duncanville area.
Specifically, why did we do it? Because we were asked to do it. You want to talk about that?
Well, in terms of the meeting that we had in
Yes,
Cedar Hill? Okay, so we were in Cedar Hill at a meeting, and Michael Morrison with COG, with text, sorry, had asked basically for support. They're looking at different options in terms of alternatives to get rail here. And one of the things that they're trying to do is look at maybe a prototype to run a rail service once or twice a day to the area. And so he asked for support to try to move forward with that venture. And so that's something that the board and I know council supports as well. Okay, I apologize. As you can see here, these are a number of pictures and activities that the board participated in throughout the year. Obviously, you can see the ribbon cutting, the Regional Economic Development Summit, Flavor Duncanville, as well as the Best Southwest Partnership Luncheons. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any before I move on to the Community Enhancement Program update. No? Okay. The Community Enhancement Program update is somewhat of the strategic plan for the DCEDC. This was the name that was given to it many years ago. And every year, the DCEDC, during their planning session, reviews their mission statement, their vision statement, as well as their goals and objectives on how to reach those. So this year, they actually updated their vision statement to add the word promote. They felt like that was just really what the DCEDC does is to promote a progressive city with a thriving business environment, high quality of life, and a strong sense of community. In addition, they shortened the mission statement and ended it with opportunity. Basically, with the mission statement, you want it short, you want it to the point, and you want it memorable. Unfortunately, we were a little wordy in the past, so they've just shortened this up, and it reaches all the touch points that we want to in terms of our mission. In terms of short-term goals and objectives, first one is to identify, prioritize, and pursue projects that can be funded through grants and public-private partnerships. That's something that you will see as we move forward throughout the year, that there could be some different partnerships that come forward, which we in economic development and also in cities that we're seeing that, especially in communities with rebuild and enhancements, that those partnerships are almost just imperative to have in order to get the larger developments or redevelop some of the distressed properties. Second, create a commercial rebuild program. This is something that obviously we talked to the council about in the past, and we'll be working on this and hopefully have this in place before the end of the year. And the board has identified some priority areas. It doesn't mean that the entire community isn't important. It's just in terms of really trying to target and focus our efforts this year, these are the areas that have been identified. Moving on, conduct a rail service study, and again, that kind of goes hand in hand with what the council's visions are, as well as obviously along the lines of the comp plan. And most of these objectives and goals, if you look at them, if you were to review the comp plan, a lot of those go hand in hand, and that's really where a lot of those came from. And so you can see up there in terms of write an approval resolution of support. Obviously, the board's already done that. And then you can see the other ones in terms of they just want to make sure that we're at the table for these discussions and continue to be an advocate for Duncanville in those discussions with future potential rail options. Identify and prioritize shopping centers that are opportunity sites for redevelopment and revitalization. Obviously, everyone, we know that there are some distressed shopping centers here in the community, and that's really one of the areas that the board has really chosen to focus on. Continuing on with the short-term goals, market the current design incentive grant program to the target areas, and again, we've identified those and will continue. Currently, we market those. We have that information available on our website. We also work with the different departments to get it out there. And whenever we speak with small businesses, that's something, and it doesn't really matter the size, especially with the sign grants and things like that, when they're having to really bring those signs back up into compliance. Yes, sir.
Why is Cedar Ridge not listed up there?
Well, again, it's not that it's not one of important to the board, but they just chose to try to target or focus our efforts this year, and these are the areas that they've identified for this year. Now, that doesn't mean that Cedar Ridge isn't important and we're just discarding that, but in terms of manpower, this is where they chose to focus this year. Moving on in terms of long-term goals, again, those partnerships, they're long and short. They're long and, I'm sorry, yes?
We had another question here, I'm sorry.
Oh, I just agree with Dennis. I think Cedar Ridge should be on there. That should be a top priority. Cedar Ridge should be on there with the others because it's a main street. It's a main drag, and we certainly don't want that to go down.
Oh, without a doubt, I do agree with that.
So I think it should be added to it, if you'll take it to your board, if they're all sitting here.
Okay, moving on, in terms of the second point would be to conduct a rail service study. And again, we do know that at some point that will be something that needs to be done, and there will be funding dollars associated with that. So I know that the EDC is prepared to assist as needed in that, on that goal. Continuing on, identifying, again, the shopping centers. That's something that, you know, we identify them on the short term, but there are some zoning barriers, and we're working with Public Works to try to overcome those and see how we can be more friendly and look at our different options to be creative in terms of addressing those issues. And also to partner with the TIF for redevelopment and revitalizations in the TIF district. So with that, I would like to thank the City Council and thank you for your input. Okay, thank you very much.
6B is to receive the monthly financial report as of January 31, 2018.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As at the end of January, we expect that our benchmark would be about 34% of budgeted revenues and expenditures. We ended January with the general fund unreserved fund balance of $14.5 million. It's 175 days of operation, and that's 100 days in excess of the 75-day reserve, or about $8.3 million. To note why we're in that position, property tax payments are at 81.1% of the budget, and they do come in primarily in the months of December and January. So we get those revenues up front, and then of course over time we spend down those revenues as we incur expenditures along the way. Our sales tax revenue is 5% higher than it was the same time last year, and the data in this report of course reflects 2 months of revenue, October, November sales tax that were received in December and January. So let's look at the general fund revenues. As always, I have the purple line, which represents the 2018 budget if it were revenues were incurred straight line. And as you can see, the blue line is the previous 3-year average, and that always spikes up in that November, December, January time frame because of those property taxes coming in. And then the red line is where we are year to date. And so we're tracking right along above that blue line. Same thing here, lasering out the property tax revenues. Again, you see that spike November, December, January, and then it levels off, and there's very little revenue generation throughout the remainder of the year. We'll look at our general fund expenditures. You can see that we started out slightly above on the red line, above a straight line in currents, and of course above the blue line 3-year average. And so in January we came right back down, settled on that line, and we anticipate to end the year on budget. If we look at the utility fund summary outlook, we ended January with a fund balance of $7 million, 136 days of operations. That's about $3.9 million in excess of the 60-day reserve. Utility solid waste revenues, they're 1 month delayed due to the billing process, so there's only 3 months of revenue that's reflected in the charts that you're about to see. And water wastewater revenues are about 8% higher than they were at the same time last year. Look at the utility fund revenues, you see that historically the blue line goes up there slightly below where we're projected for the 2018 budget. And then as we've started off the year, we're progressing above that blue line, and we should end somewhere near the purple line at the top. Utility fund expenditures, again, these are, we've trended below what the straight line budget is, so that's pretty typical. And hopefully we'll, come in at the end of the year at or below budget. Innovation fund projects, the two that you see highlighted there in yellow are essentially complete. The other ones are still in progress. And with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Councilwoman Jameson.
What's going on with the field house?
Could you be more specific?
Well, it doesn't look like it's doing too good.
Well, it's certainly doing better than it was the same time last year. I believe the anticipated loss is a little more than half of what it was in the previous year.
Do you think then we could have a more, maybe on the next meeting, look at the field house more and see what's going on?
Councilmember Jameson, we realized when we did the last Parks Department quarterly report that we didn't discuss the field house, so we were going to get the field house on the same schedule as, so when Bart presents his quarterly report on Parks, we'll also do a report on the field house. And actually, I think we have the field house also scheduled for next month's meeting, and then after that, we'll get it on track with the Parks. But yes, we are planning to give an updated or a regular report on the field house activities.
So we're not going to have a report until April? Is that what you're saying?
I don't remember if it was the March 20th or the April meeting, but we did have it scheduled. We can put it on the March 20th. That's fine.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Thomas.
Yeah, I don't know if you can answer this, but what is the anticipated percentage of revenue from ad valorem taxes from last year increase? Is it 2%, 4%? Do you know?
The overall was about 9%.
So we have a 9% increase from last year.
That's what it was in the previous year, and I believe we're on track for a very similar percentage. It might be slightly less than 9, but it's very close.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further lights, thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Item number 6B, or C, is to receive the Public Works Department quarterly report.
Mayor and Council, good evening. I'm here to present to you the Public Works quarterly update. Again, this will be actually a summary of first and second quarter. Due to Christmas, we got bumped. So first, we'll go to the personnel. The first thing I want to point out again is we hired Lynette, who is our new permit tech. She started in December, And I'm going to sort of tie these into the work plan item. So this was part of our work plan item 2.46, Development One-Stop Shop. We excuse me, we also hired Angelica, who is our new CDBG Code Enforcement Officer. This is tied to 3.04, which is exploring strategies to provide more effective code enforcement services. She was the last one, so that brought us to our full complement of code enforcement officers of 4. And then finally, we hired Athena Seaton, who is our master planning tech. And again, this was tied as well to our development one-stop shop, but as you, I don't know if you saw earlier, but she assists Chastity with everything planning. Tied to the recent accomplishments, I want to tie this to, again, some of the city council goals. Goal 2, which was maximizing city and community resources to improve quality of life in a sustainable manner, with the capstone of creating high-quality neighborhoods and parks. So the first one that we have, which was task 2.54, was we established the concrete construction crew, which started in October 2018. And the next slide just shows the areas of focus where they're at. Currently, they're over in Flame, excuse me, Flame East. And what I wanted to highlight to you, just sort of the green area, doesn't work very well. The green dashed lines, again, are the areas where they've already done the work. The areas in yellow, which you can't see, so they have the purple ovals, those are the areas that they're currently working. They've got behind with the recent rain, so they're catching up. And then you'll see a few areas along Fouts, which are, we've got to go back and continue to fix, and then we'll move on to the next project. Another recent accomplishment, this is, this is a 2.48, which is our wastewater improvements, is that we did water and wastewater lines sort of along, what we're calling this the Lodema project. This is in vicinity of Lodema, so we did water and sewer along Tanco, and then water and sewer along Joe's, Frank Kiesler, excuse me, and Lodema. So we completed that project as well. We also we're finishing up the Daniel Nance Vineyard water line replacement. So this was replacing an old 2-inch water line with an 8-inch line. That one is substantially complete. One other thing I want to highlight is this was in support of the fire department, but ASLO, our equipment services division superintendent, got the new, excuse me, the new amateur radio club antenna reestablished, which is a backup system for our emergency operations. So we've got that updated on the main tower. We also are finishing up the North Main Street pump station, and this is just two of the pictures from it. So we added a chlorine building and a secondary building, as well as adding an emergency generator to that project. Finally, just for the update on the work plan status, we have 19 in progress. We finished the Redbird Lane, Duncanville Road streetlight.
Run it?
Yep, got that one done. That was 2.60, task 2.60, and then as, I know it was a lot, ma'am. And then finally, per discussion in a previous council meeting, we've tabled the street maintenance rate study, which was originally set as task 2.62 in the work plan. Just looking at the performance indicators from the last 2 quarters, what I just want to highlight with this one is there is a drop in the sewer lines cleaned. No, we don't have cleaner lines. It was just tied to some maintenance issues that we had, and we've got it back online. But the potholes patch is a good news story. The last time that I did the quarterly report, we also had a similar trend, which was a significant decrease in the number of potholes that we had to patch from the previous year. And as we all know from the street maintenance briefing I gave a few meetings ago, we have, the council has emphasized street maintenance over the last several years, and we're starting to reap some of those benefits with less potholes. Yes, ma'am.
So what are you attributing the decline in the sewer services replaced and the sewer lateral stoppages cleared? And the
We
sewer
have
lines cleaned?
yes, ma'am, there's a machine that we had, and it was intermittent, kept breaking, so we had to get it fixed. But it was tied to basically downtime on the piece of equipment, ma'am. I didn't break it, I didn't fix it, I can't.
But you got it fixed, because you've been here during the time it got fixed.
Yes, ma'am.
Take credit.
Yes, because I would take the beating too. Moving on to the next performance indicators, the two things I wanted to highlight was code enforcement. As you saw in the weekly report, we're full strength with our code enforcement officers are out there really emphasizing the junk motor vehicles. We really got enough bandwidth that we could go down some of the alleys and really look and get a better picture. And so we have identified some issues with the dresses in the rear and junk vehicles and just a bunch of other stuff, just as really just an illustration of a full strength code enforcement staff out making it happen. And then the citations issued again. The main focus for us with code enforcement is compliance. And so to me, a project that results in no citation is the goal. The ideal is that we get them a notice of violation and they comply. And we do not have to go to the step of citation, because that usually also means an abatement that the city had to execute in lieu of having the property owner do the right thing. So subject to your questions, that concludes my brief.
I see no questions. Thank you, sir. It is now 8:55. That concludes our agenda for tonight, so we stand adjourned.